What is this Wall Street bailout, and how is it being managed? Still taking shape, still hard to understand. Let's try a metaphor. Money is Halloween candy. And those Wall Street bankers are, metaphorically speaking, our 6-year-old child who went out and got more candy than we'd ever seen or imagined. Trick or treat. And with all that candy sitting there, we parents, the taxpayers, hired a babysitter to supervise our child. Only instead of hiring a grown-up who wisely fears what happens when 6-year-olds do what they like to do best, eat all the candy all at once, we instead hired a 7-year-old babysitter, the federal government. So what happened? The 6-year-old ate more candy than it should have on the 7-year-old's watch and got sick all over the carpet. And now that we're paying and sending home the 7-year-old babysitter, we get her take on this disgusting, huge mess of a crisis we're now in. And our 7-year-old babysitter turns to us and says, well, the problem here is that now you're out of candy. You're going to need more candy. And that, roughly, is my layman's understanding of what just happened to our economy. We left a kid with too much candy, Wall Street and its money, under the supervision of a babysitter who was not at all inclined to babysit. And we should have known better, because the babysitter we hired told us explicitly a generation ago what it thought of supervision.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Neat. But if that's what you think about government, you probably shouldn't get to run one. What do our overseers, the incumbent babysitters, want now? They want so much more candy that it seems unlikely that that much candy exists. $700 billion worth, with no questions asked.
This is no time for partisanship. We must join to move urgently needed legislation as quickly as possible, without adding controversial provisions that could delay action.
We need this to be clean and quick, and we need to get it in place.
We need to keep it clean, simple, move it through the House and Senate, and get it on the president's desk.
Bills moving quickly and the Bush administration asking for blind faith are each things that give us good cause to worry about the details. In this case, there's a 3-page plan laid out by Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson. That works out to about $233 billion per page. The proposal says that Paulson's personal decisions about how to spend that $700 billion, quote, may not be reviewed by any court of law or any administrative agency. There are signs of resistance from a Democratic Party that hopefully remembers being bulldozed by the administration on the Patriot Act, that was 342 pages, and the 5.5-year-long war in Iraq. Among fledgling Democratic demands, a few helpful layers of government oversight, a provision that would help homeowners avoid foreclosures instead of just helping Wall Street, and proposed limits on Wall Street CEO compensation, since we'll be the ones paying their salaries. Some very conservative Republicans, including Congressman Steve Pence of Indiana and Senator Jim DeMint of South Carolina, are resisting the whole idea of the bailout. No more candy. Even Barack Obama and John McCain appear to agree that there is something unhealthy going on here.
I'm greatly concerned about the plan that gives a single individual the unprecedented power to spend $1 trillion.
We cannot give a blank check to Washington with no oversight and no accountability, when no oversight and accountability is exactly what got us into this mess in the first place.
So what's to do about this sticky mess? Did my candy-sick Halloween metaphor work for you? Joining us now, Robert Reich, Secretary of Labor under President Clinton. He's now a professor at the University of California at Berkeley. He serves as an economic advisor to Barack Obama. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Rachel. That was a pretty sticky, sick metaphor. I mean, Wall Street has been on a sugar high for years, and obviously, when you go on a sugar high like that, you're going to come down, and it came down, it crashed. Your metaphor was exactly right about 6-year-olds, except these are very wealthy 6-year-olds. The top people on Wall Street, as you know, have been raking in tens, if not hundreds, of millions of dollars the past few years, when that sugar high was very high.
And is the point of the metaphor right as well, though? Is this giant bailout essentially the price we are now paying for a lack of supervision all these years?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a kind of an extortionate price, because what Hank Paulson, our Treasury Secretary, and Ben Bernanke, the Fed chief, are saying to Congress and to the public is, you got to do this. Provide $700, $800, $900, maybe $1 trillion, $900 billion. And if you don't, the whole financial system is in danger of melting down. And what Democrats are now saying is, wait a minute, this can't be completely right. We can't give a completely blank check. McCain is also saying that, although McCain never wanted regulation before, people are saying, no, there have to be some conditions attached to this unbelievable sugar high that we're going to give these kids.
Even though John McCain never wanted regulation before, and so this whole crisis represents a total political U-turn for him, even though we understand his history as setting him up in sort of an awkward situation right now. Now that he is a born-again regulator, is he actually suggesting the same kind of strings attached, the same kind of regulations as Barack Obama is for this bailout?
Well, look, he's not being very specific. In fact, neither candidate is being very specific right now. They're waiting for Congress to make a move. What McCain is saying is, look, we have to have some oversight and some regulation. This, again, very different from the John McCain we knew even a year and a half ago, or even a year ago, or even 6 months ago. And for all the time he was in charge of the Senate Commerce Committee, he was deregulation John McCain. Also, there is some kind of hint that John McCain is going to say, we have executive salaries that are too large. Now, that, again, is a John McCain who never met an executive salary he didn't like, whose own tax plan is going to give the average executive about $700,000 worth of tax cuts if it ever goes into effect, whose economic advisor is Carly Fiorina, who got a $50 million golden parachute when she was fired from Hewlett-Packard. So this is all very, very curious, very strange goings-on.
It should be noted that when John McCain was asked about Carly Fiorina's golden parachute, I think $42 million, I think is the number I've got in my head, he said he'd never heard about it. It was totally news to him. Secretary Reich, does this need to be rushed? I mean, Congress wants to do this within 2 weeks without the normal hearings, without the normal committee review process. That is usually a recipe for a generation of regret. Should they slow this thing down?
Well, look, we've got a lame duck president. We've Congress wants to get back to campaigning. It only planned to stay in session this week. It wants to get back to the folks back home because an election is coming up in 6 weeks. Nobody wants a meltdown on Wall Street, so there is a rush to judgment. There is definitely pressure to do this thing quickly, but there are people who are speaking out, not only Obama, but also Barney Frank, others who are in Congress who are saying, wait a minute, we've got to protect homeowners. We have got to make sure that there is some control of executive compensation. We can't let Wall Street off the hook entirely. We've got to have some protection for taxpayers.
One last very quick question. There is a troubling detail in this 3-page plan put forward by Secretary Paulson in which it says decisions by the Secretary of the Treasury are non-reviewable. They may not be reviewed by any court of law or any administrative agency. What's up with that?
Rachel, that is not only is that disturbing because it really does create a kind of a King Hank Paulson, King Henry the 22nd, but also if you look at the fine print, you see that what the Treasury Department would do if it gets all of these bad loans off the books of these investment banks and others is to turn around and hire consultants. That is, investment bankers, many from the same banks, to make decisions about how to dispose of this to save taxpayer money. So in some ways, Wall Street collects twice. They collected on the upside, and now as consultants to decide how to dispose of all these bad loans, they may collect once again.
Yeah, you wonder what happens when you put the Goldman Sachs CEO in charge of the Treasury at a time like this. Robert Reich, former Secretary of Labor and current Obama economic advisor, thank you for your time tonight.